So I just took this off the race car, and I know it's already set to the proper length. If I put this on the Spring Smasher, this is going to give me my exact, absolutely perfect way of getting my center to center. So I'm going to run the Spring Smasher up, and I'm going to put the pin in here. I'm just going to bump it until the pin just goes in. So it's in, no tension, 17.63 inches. So now that is going to be your Bible number. If this is your right front or your left front or whatever one it is, that right there is going to set your exact center to center. The problem with trying to measure, if you have a shock and spring that's on an angle, the bolt's actually coming through it straight this way. So the bolt's going to come out, and this bolt's going to come out, and when you get to the point where you're going to measure it, they're actually pointed like this. That's not accurate, because this distance between these two will be shorter. So it's not going to be your true center to center. We're basing everything on where the shock mounts are on the race cars. So if you had two race cars sitting side by side, and you want to make sure that you have the same center to centers on both those cars, because it's easy. It's the nicest way of doing it, in my mind. Or let's say you crash in the heat race and you bust the shock mount off it, and you want to know where your shock mount was. What I do is I take a 4-foot level and I put it underneath the 2x4 in the car and just extend it out to where my shock mount is. And I just measure from the top of that level up to the center of my top shock mount. And that way, if you knock the shock off in the heat and you have that measurement, you grab a level or a piece of aluminum or whatever that's straight, you can run it along the bottom of your frame rail, measure up to your shock mount, set it at that 19 inches or whatever it is, and you know as long as you put your shock and spring back to where it was, your ride heights are going to be perfect. The fronts you can do, I always measure from the split in the removable shock tower, measure up to the top or bottom of your shock mount, just so you have a reference point. But I always keep those reference points for every race car in my notebook so that, you know, when you run into a situation like that, you're not basically guessing, because you'll never get it right. What I personally do is, when I scale my race car, say for the first time of the season or whatever, I will come up with a baseline. So I've gone through all the exercises of getting my center to centers, and then I know what my load numbers are from my machine. So these are just fictitious numbers I scribbled down. So my right front would be 19-inch center to center and 150 pounds of load. That's not 150 pounds on the scales. That's not the wheel. That's the actual load on the coil spring. That's compressed to get you that much load. So I go through all the corners. Now, you can have your baseline at 100 pounds of wedge. You can have your baseline at 0 wedge. It's basically whatever you want. But if I look at these numbers now and I say, okay, well, I know if I put 2 turns in each coil, that's going to give me basically another 50 pounds of wedge. So if I knew I wanted to be at 70 pounds of wedge, I have to put, obviously, my 2 turns here, 2 turns here, take 2 out of here, and 2 out of here. Well, we all know from years of scaling that our ride heights aren't basically going to change any when we do that, as long as we do it equally. Well, as long as we do it equally like that, that means our center-to-center numbers, our 19 or 22 or 20 or 18, aren't going to change either. So, if that's how you choose to do it, and you want to put that extra wedge in it, and you want to make sure that your load numbers are the same so you can write it down in your book for that day, I'm going to take this, my right front, I'm going to run it up to, if I've already scaled the car, I'm going to run it up to 19 inches. This load number is going to be higher. It's going to be 2 turns higher than it was before. So when I run it up now to 19 inches, let's say it's 180 pounds or whatever it is, that's the new number I'm going to write down in my book for that week. And then this one's going to be higher, and this one's going to be lower, and this one's going to be lower. So you always know where your baseline is. If I go to 19 and 150 pounds of load on my spring machine, and I match all my corners to what my baseline is, I'll just about guarantee that when you set that race car in the scales, as long as your stagger and stuff's the same, you haven't, crashed or anything, then you'll easily get right to 20 pounds of wedge. So when you're at the racetrack that night, and you need to make a quick change, you don't have to do any math. You can just go by what your new load number is for that night. But don't lose your baseline, because this is like your little Bible.